Headlines of VTV News. Prime Minister Phie calls on Australian businesses to invest in new growth drivers in Vietnam. Red Sea tensions create obstacles for Vietnam's seafood industry. And later in our world news, the 14th National People's Congress, the National Legislature of China, began its second session on Tuesday morning.
Broadcasting from Hanoi, the capital of Vietnam. VTV News starts right now.
Hello and welcome to VTV News, broadcast live to you from Hanoi. You're with me, Lina Pham. Here's the top news of the hour. Prime Minister Phie attended the Vietnam-Australia Business Forum on March the 5th. Senator Ayres stated that the relationship between the two countries is reinforced by the connections between their people, businesses and governments. Prime Minister Phie outlined his expectations for 5 areas of improved relations: enhanced political trust, increased economic, trade and investment cooperation, advanced science, technology and innovation, collaboration, strengthened partnerships in education, training, cultural and people-to-people exchange, and better cooperation in tourism and labor. He asked Australia for support for strategic breakthroughs. Beyond traditional sectors, he suggested cooperation in new areas such as digital transformation, green transformation, circular economy, knowledge-based economy, and the sharing economy centered on innovation in science and technology. Vietnam is becoming an ideal destination for international brands, ranging from fast fashion to luxury and high-end retail. This observation comes from Savills, Hanoi's commercial leasing department, noting the increasing number of tenants in large commercial centers. Last year, 11 major international brands made their debut in Vietnam, and it's anticipated that more will follow this year. Additionally, the number of high-income individuals in Vietnam has surged by 70% in the last 5 years. This trend is expected to persist over the next 5 years. In the past 2 months alone, exports of agricultural, forestry and fishery products have nearly reached $10 billion, marking a 50% increase over the same period. A notable standout is rice. Its exports continue to thrive due to rising demand from various markets. This trend presents significant opportunities for Vietnam's rice industry, especially as rice prices in the Mekong Delta are rebounding.
The dry Om 18 rice variety is currently selling for 3.8 cents per kilogram. Given the high yield of 10 tons per hectare, most farmers are optimistic about the potential profits.
Though profits per kilogram aren't that much, the high yield greatly increases the total profits.
The higher price has significantly increased this year's profit.
India, Vietnam's second-largest rice import market, has just increased its import target by 1.6 million tons. This raises Vietnam's rice import quota in 2024 to 3.6 million tons.
The Indonesian market has presented opportunities for Vietnamese rice exports. First, there is stability. Second, we can negotiate for better prices.
We believe it's going to be a good year for rice exports in Vietnam, as we have seen many countries focus on purchasing Vietnamese rice.
Numerous businesses are reporting an influx of new orders with prices several hundred US$ per kilogram higher than last year. They are ready to seize this opportunity, especially given the supply shortage amid increasing demand. The Ministry of Industry and Trade has urged businesses to monitor market developments closely and ensure sufficient supply to meet the highest export target for 2024.
In the first 2 months of 2024, Vietnam's agricultural, forestry, and fishery exports neared $10 billion, marking a 50% increase from the same period last year. The seafood industry showed significant recovery with an export turnover of $1.37 billion, a nearly 29% increase. The primary export product was shrimp, which reached $403 million, a more than 20% increase. The United States, China, and Japan maintained their positions as the three largest markets for Vietnamese seafood in the early months of this year. However, the Ministry of Agriculture and Rural Development emphasized the need for a stable, sustainable recovery rather than a temporary cycle. The Vietnam Association of Seafood Exporters and Producers, or VASEP, predicts that seafood stockpiles in major markets like China, the EU, and the US will dwindle in the coming months. As a result, seafood export prices are expected to rise gradually starting in the second quarter of this year. This trend could provide an opportunity for Vietnamese seafood to boost export revenue, particularly in high-demand markets such as China.
During the initial months of the year, China emerged as Vietnam's second-largest seafood import market. The seafood export turnover to China in January saw a threefold increase compared to the same period previously. Particularly, shrimp and trough fish exports almost quadrupled. While earlier, seafood exports to China were predominantly transported by road, primarily reaching areas like Guangdong, Guangxi, and Yunnan provinces. Now a significant proportion is being exported via sea routes.
The Chinese market will be the main target for the seafood industry this year. Currently, China has reduced imports from Ecuador due to rising prices. This presents opportunities for us in the first half of this year.
The year 2024 also presents new opportunities for the Vietnamese seafood industry. This is because China is urgently finalizing the legal review for the import of Vietnamese wild-caught seafood in the near future.
Vietnam produces about 1,000 tons of tropical rock lobsters each year. China has agreed to foster conditions for Vietnamese rock lobsters to enter China, adhering to additional standards on veterinary hygiene and food quarantine requirements.
Identifying new trends, expanding market reach, and concentrating on high-value export products are the keys to increasing Vietnamese seafood's market share in potential markets like China.
Tensions in the Red Sea have resulted in longer alternative shipping routes between Asia, Europe, and the east coast of North America. This shift is causing significant challenges for Vietnamese seaport businesses due to increased shipping costs. Despite these challenges, Vietnamese businesses are finding opportunities amidst the difficulties.
Instability in the Red Sea is severely impacting the global supply chain. This includes a steep rise in freight prices, an extension in delivery time by 20 to 25 days, and an increase in cargo insurance. Unable to reduce their prices, Vietnam's seafood products are now shouldering additional cost burdens.
Businesses should negotiate with partners about the longer delivery times and how the increased costs will be shared between buyers and sellers.
However, opportunities often accompany difficulties. This challenge could lead to a shift in export markets and products.
Marine routes to Asian countries, such as India, Japan, and South Korea, are outside of the tensions' reach. Therefore, Vietnamese seafood and logistics businesses should prioritize promoting their products for export to these intra-Asia markets.
This is also an opportunity for Vietnamese businesses to export dry goods and canned products. These products have a long shelf life and are also suitable in the context of inflation and conflicts.
In the long term, however, the logistics industry should aim to develop Vietnam's shipping fleet and reefer container supply system. This would allow export businesses to proactively enhance their competitiveness in the global supply chain, specifically in seafood export and import.
Foreign shipping lines have just increased surcharges for imported and exported goods at Vietnamese seaports in February. While the loading and unloading prices paid by foreign shipping lines to ports are still relatively stable, about $55 to $85 per 40-foot container, these shipping lines increase the surcharge to about $180 to $200. There are also about 10 other surcharges increased that presents the need for stricter management on surcharge prices for foreign shipping lines.
The freight fee for this business importing wood from Europe increased by over $500 per 40-foot container at the beginning of the year due to the impact of Red Sea tensions. Now with the increased surcharges at seaports, the business is facing even more difficulties.
This surcharge increases keep coming, not just this time. Despite being a long-term customer, we have never received an explanation for the substantial rate hike by the shipping lines.
Vietnamese businesses commonly export FOB and import CIF. Consequently, proactive management of this cost remains relatively limited.
Vietnamese import and export goods are predominantly managed by foreign shipping lines. Vietnamese enterprises have minimal involvement.
At present, Decree Number 146 stipulates foreign shipping lines to disclose prices and external surcharges. The Ministry of Transport has proposed that the Ministry of Finance include shipping line surcharges for containers in the subject of price declaration within the draft decree guiding the law on prices 2023.
According to regulations, the state management agency will assess the price structure and determine if the costs are reasonable. If they are found to be inappropriate, feedback will be provided, prompting the shipping company to provide clear explanations for these costs in order to establish an appropriate price.
The Vietnam Maritime Administration will also enhance the management of shipping routes operated by foreign shipping lines. This involves amending Decree 58 on maritime operations management to mitigate instances where shipping lines arbitrarily increase surcharges, thus enhancing the efficiency of transport route management.
And before we move to the next part of VTV News, let's check out how the Vietnam dong is weighed against other currencies in the world market today. Coming up next, Quảng Ninh community join hands to protect mangrove forest. And what is Millionaire Village in the Highlands? Let's find out. In the late hours of March the 4th and the early morning of March the 5th, 5 forest fires were reported in Lai Châu province. These fires were triggered by dry weather and high temperatures. The fires first broke out in Mường Mít commune, Thanh Uyên district, then spread to Na Un and Na Sang villages in Bắc Đa commune, Thanh Uyên district. The affected areas mainly consisted of regenerated forest and natural forests. As of now, control has been regained over the two of the fires. To mitigate the impacts of a drought and salinity, many provinces in the Mekong Delta are implementing various solutions. Sóc Trăng and Tiền Giang have adjusted the sowing schedule for the two main crops, winter, spring, and summer, autumn, starting 20 to 30 days earlier. Furthermore, farmers are encouraged to modify their crop structure while increasing water storage in ponds, lakes, and canals for irrigation. Localities are also actively reviewing and reinforcing their dike systems to prevent floods, droughts, and saltwater intrusion. Vietnam boasts roughly 200,000 hectares of mangrove forests extending from Móng Cái to Cà Mau Cape. Despite natural disasters and environmental pollution, these areas continue to grow. In Quảng Ninh province, which has had the largest mangrove forest area in the northern region over the past decade, these forests are under community management and preservation.
In Dongrue Commune, Tianyan District, residents collect snails when the tide recedes. This practice has transformed the lives of many households over the past 12 years. By following sustainable catching methods, they can earn between $4 and $40 per day.
I only collect the large snails and not the small ones, allowing them to continue growing.
12 years ago, this area was a swamp where residents cultivated aquaculture products. However, a mangrove reforestation project transformed the landscape into the vast forest it is today.
The community has called on the locals to protect the mangrove forest. We have also established management groups to protect the forest.
In many places, mangrove forests are typically planted as part of projects managed by forest management boards. However, Quang Ninh Province has gone beyond these conventional methods. They have empowered the local community and individuals to take part in planting and caring for the trees.
Protecting and developing mangrove forests has created livelihoods for people by utilizing seafood in a sustainable manner. This model also helps boost tourism in the province.
The collaboration of authorities at all levels and individuals has facilitated the growth of the mangrove forest. This model has also secured people's livelihoods and shielded them from the adverse impacts of climate change and natural disasters.
Collecting scrap metal to earn money remains an informal job in Vietnam. However, despite rapid urbanization, scrap dealers maintain a livelihood as they can earn a stable income from this job. Very few people are aware of the importance and contributions of scrap dealers in the country's circular economy and the recycling of waste materials. Every day, more than 5,000 tons of garbage is transferred to landfills. Some is burned while the majority is buried. Scrap dealers are always the first ones to collect and sort garbage.
From 11 p.m. to 2 a.m. every day, hundreds of kilograms of plastic, nylon, or iron scraps are purchased on this street. Trucks carrying hundreds of tons of scraps will then head towards recycling facilities.
We can collect 1 ton of cardboard per day and around 2 tons of plastic every 3 days. We can earn money from selling these plastic bottles and beer cans.
These women started to make a living in Hanoi with a bicycle and less than $40. Every day, they wander around streets in search of scrap metal.
I need to classify scrap metal before selling them to recyclers.
Living a hard life in the capital city, scrap dealers have contributed to the recycling of waste materials in Vietnam.
I collect more than 100 kilograms of scrap metal every day.
After 6 years of research, the Hanoi Architectural University introduced a book about scrap dealers in Vietnam. Despite a low-income job, collecting scrap metal proves its worth to the society in terms of environmental protection.
Scrap dealers are unique in Vietnam. They play a key role to the recycling process, including garbage collection, transportation, and classification. Scrap dealers' activities will lay a foundation for Vietnam to develop its circular economy.
About 15 to 20% of total household solid waste can be recycled. Scrap dealers can collect a large number of recyclable waste materials before they are transferred to landfills to be buried and burned. Scrap dealers have helped the government reduce 20% of the total domestic waste recycling cost.
Scrap dealers are very good at sorting plastic waste. The government should recognize collecting scrap metal as a job and provide training for scrap dealers to enhance their skills.
There are nearly 3 million people working as scrap dealers and garbage collectors in Vietnam. They are expected to contribute significantly in the country's environmental protection in the future.
In the border region of Đắk Lắk province in Krông Nang district, there's a village affectionately named Barefoot Millionaire Village. It is entirely populated by the Nung ethnic group. The coffee tree is what makes people stay in this arid land, allowing them to lead prosperous lives. We will explore this millionaire village in the following story.
Nestled in the depths of the Krong Nang Valley in Dak Lak Province, a village of about 50 red-tiled stilt houses is home to the Nung An ethnic people. They migrated from Gabang Province to settle here in the late 1980s. Despite the passing years, one thing remains constant. Coffee is still the primary crop that sustains the entire village. Over the past decade, farmers have profited thousands of dollars from coffee beans. Now, with the coffee prices at their peak, the village may see the emergence of more millionaires.
Coffee has always brought us stable and high profits, so people still keep coffee as their main crop. Many have also become millionaires because of coffee.
In Guanghua village, each household cultivates an average of 2 to 3 hectares of coffee, interspersed with durian and macadamia trees. In recent years, villagers have employed high-tech methods to care for their coffee trees, such as using an app for automatic watering systems. They also use online resources to monitor crop conditions and pest activity.
This app makes it very convenient for farmers to look up information on coffee tree diseases and how to deal with them.
The village has contributed nearly $4 million to build new rural areas by changing farming methods to develop sustainable coffee production and maintain stable profits. As a result, the Nung An people now have more resources to preserve their traditional culture. Even though they have become millionaires, their cultural values remain unchanged in the mountains and forests of the Central Highlands.
Hanoi will continue to organize a light show with hundreds of drones on Saturday and Sunday this week, March the 10th and the 9th, according to Hanoi Department of Tourism. The program will be held at Theo Creative Cultural Space or Chin Kum Son Walking Street. The drone performance will start at 9:30 p.m. on March the 9th, lasting for about 3 minutes. The activity is part of the Hanoi Tourism Program to welcome 2024 and announce the decision to recognize Nhật Tân of Theo District as a tourist area. Coming up next, China targets 5% economic growth. And UNGA president calls for great efforts to resolve Gaza crisis. The 14th National People's Congress, the National Legislature of China, began its second session on Tuesday morning at the Great Hall of People in Beijing. This annual event is one of the 2 significant political events in China. During the opening meeting, Premier Li Qiang presented a government work report for 2023 and proposed a plan for national economic and social development in 2024. He announced a target of approximately 5% for the country's economic growth this year. Experts believe that this moderate target will promote growth, job creation, social security, and enhance growth quality. More than half of the mainland's 31 provincial level governments in China have set lower GDP growth targets for 2024 compared to the previous year. A consumer inflation target of around 3% has been set by the Chinese government for this year. The session is scheduled to run for 7 days and conclude on the afternoon of March the 11th. The United Nations General Assembly convened on Tuesday to discuss the situation in Gaza. This meeting came about because the Security Council was unable to pass a draft resolution for an immediate ceasefire. The President of the General Assembly condemned the catastrophic, unconscionable, and shameful conditions in Gaza, particularly the deaths of over 100 people during the distribution of aid supplies. He urged for maximum restraint to protect innocent civilian lives, especially in light of possible Israeli ground out operations in Rafah, a region home to nearly 1.5 million people. The President of the General Assembly once again called on the international community to resolve the crisis. This appeal followed the Security Council's ongoing deadlock in passing a resolution to end the conflict between Israel and Hamas. The United States has repeatedly vetoed draft Security Council resolutions concerning the situation in Gaza. The Nordic Response 24 NATO exercises aimed at addressing escalating tensions in Europe commenced on Monday in northern Finland, Sweden, and Norway. These drills involve more than 20,000 soldiers from 13 nations, with over 4,000 Finnish soldiers participating. The Norway-led Nordic Response 2024 marks Finland's largest ever involvement in a foreign exercise. The joint drill, which involves the Air Force, Army, and Navy, will continue until March the 14th. The Russian Foreign Ministry has stated that it is monitoring the exercise, which Moscow considers to be a provocative diplomatic move. South Korea's birth rate is reaching record lows. Consequently, city officials in Seoul are planning to subsidize egg freezing. More on this in the following story.
As of 2023, South Korea has experienced a dramatically low birth rate of 0.7 children per woman, making it one of the countries with the lowest birth rates globally. This figure starkly contrasts with the 2.1 replacement fertility rate recommended by the World Health Organization. This declining birth rate accelerates the aging process in South Korean society and contributes to a decrease in population size. To mitigate this issue, the government has invested billions of dollars in initiatives to boost birth rates. Recently, Seoul's city authorities have launched a subsidy program for egg freezing procedures, contributing approximately $1,500 per round. This initiative alleviates concerns among South Korean women about remaining single or missing opportunities to have a child.
Egg freezing is important for women's biobanks. After freezing eggs, women can choose to have children 5, 10, or even 15 years later.
In recent years, there's been a growing demand for egg freezing procedures as more information about their potential to extend female fertility comes to light. The number of egg freezing cases at this medical center has steadily increased from 72 cases in 2015 to over 1,000 cases in 2022. In theory, egg freezing allows women to preserve their fertility, with higher chances of success if the procedure is performed before the age of 38.
And now let's take a look at the weather forecast. And that's it for this edition of VTV News. Thank you very much for watching. To rewatch our program, you can download VTVgo from App Store or Google Play, or tune in our YouTube channel at youtube.com/VTV4Go. Goodbye for now.